Hi everybody, this is E12 Life. Welcome to my podcast. Hi everybody, thank y'all for listening. Today, we're going to be talking about friends. That's right, I said it. We're going to be talking about friends. Now, when I was growing up, I was just learning, the right type of friends to be around. And that was just my thing. For a while, I did stay to myself when I was younger, and that was sort of me. And I want to let y'all know I was a twin, and I lost my twin at a young age, God rest his soul, my twin. I love him, Ever since that happened when I was little, I pretty much, didn't want to be a part of, friends. I didn't really want to get close to people. That was just sort of my thing growing up. And just growing up into middle school, when I got into the 6th grade, that's when I really started to experiment with friends. Not like really experiment, but just being around friends and really just getting to know people and stuff like that. And I've been around my homegirls, I've been around my homeboys. But let's go ahead and talk about that. Now, y'all already know I talked about the 10 women, the 10 females that I talked about in my other podcast. So let me catch y'all up, all right? The five women that I was talking about were into, playing the drums and the piano. And those were the women that I hanged around with, learning music and just having a great time with them. And if I wasn't around them, I was around my other 5 other homegirls that were into poetry. And that was sort of my thing. That was my time to pretty much share poetry that I was into when I was, just by myself. That's sort of the thing I was doing, writing poetry and just, playing the drums and the piano. I was around those friends, and I had my homeboys, I hanged around them, and I had fun, I enjoyed some moments with them, but sometimes I did not want to hang around them. Now, don't get me wrong, I was the person that was in school that definitely wanted to have fun and pretty much enjoy myself. I didn't want to, the type of homeboys that I had, they went places that would get me in trouble. And I didn't want to be that trouble kid. I didn't want to be the one that was getting into trouble all of the time. And I didn't want to be around those friends, but I only, hang around them when they weren't getting in trouble. That was sort of my thing. And eventually I stopped hanging around them. I hanged around a lot of females, homegirls, my whole life. Pretty much, I hanged around a lot of females my whole life, just growing up into school. That was just sort of my thing. And I felt like the homegirls kept me out of trouble. They kept me out of trouble, They had my back, and every time I wanted to, just hang out with, the only time I hang around my homeboys when we were like at the basketball court, we would probably, play some basketball and stuff like that. If we wasn't like at the gym working out, but, I would go work out, but, they'll go and work out and just be doing the stupidest stuff, in the gym just to get women. That was just sort of not my thing, but they did make me laugh. I enjoyed being around them because they would just make a fool of themselves, and I would just be like, wow, like, I come to work out, they would call me up and hit me up and be like, hey, let's go work out or let's go play basketball. And every time we play basketball, women would come and they would sit and just, watch us play basketball, and they would be trying to do the most, and that's just, I was just not that type of character. I wasn't that character that was just trying to show out just to get women, and my homeboys did that. They was just trouble type of kids, that was just what it was. They were doing everything to pretty much get attention, and that was just them, and I just hang around homegirls because they kept me out of trouble, and I love my homegirls for that, and I just love hanging around them. And I was just as her person at the end of the day, I was just like, what type of friends do I hang around with? And my mom was always, teaching me, hey, don't be around these type of friends because they'll get you in trouble. Be careful what you do with the friends that you have, because the friends that you have shows a character of, who you are. When you're around, bad friends, they just assume that you're a bad friend too. Like, oh yeah, you're a bad boy just because all these other friends are bad boys, So yeah, I used to get hit with that sometimes, when other girls used to come around me and try to be my friend. They're like, oh, you just like that dude, that like your homeboy. I was like, no, I'm a different person, And I look at it like this, and I used to tell women that used to come up to me, and I tell them, I say, hey, you're a nice woman, right? But if all of your homegirls are terrible, then you're just that one good person out of all of your, homegirls. There's out of every friends, there's always one good guy that's trying to help the other friends behave themselves. You know what I'm saying? Especially when we go out to eat. Me and my homeboys will go out to eat, we'll have a great time, but as soon as they see a girl, it's like, oh, that way of them just gets out of control. Like, they don't know how to really, go up to a woman the right way. They gotta call them names and all that good stuff there. And I'd be like, hey, don't do that. And they'll get mad at me sometimes because they'll see me and they'll be like, hey, how you doing? And, they'll get mad at me and be like, hey, you took the girl we was trying to talk to. And I was like, that's not even my thing. Like, I didn't tell her to come over to me, But that's just the thing that I ran into with my friends when it came to women and stuff like that. And other homegirls, they would see the good guy and just be like, I'm glad you're not like the rest of your friends. And some of the girls that I did meet, and I just, I was just that dude to be a friend, But yeah, I could tell them, like, just be careful of your homegirls, just don't try to be that type of character. And I just want to say shout out to, all the people out there that has friends that are enjoying their friends. And I definitely want to just say, just be careful of the friends that you choose, that you have around you. And just, if you have bad friends, just pick those times to hang around with them. That way you're not getting yourself in trouble. You know what I'm saying? Always remember who you are and, just do that. That's just how I feel.